Welcome back to MVM. Today, I'm going to give you 5 things that you need to know about the upcoming game, Weather Machine.
5.
It is a Lacerda game. Yes, now for some of you, that might be an obvious no-brainer, but there are people out there watching right now that have probably heard that term, Lacerda game, and having no idea what it actually means. This is a Lacerda game. This is a designer, Vital Lacerda, who is known for his incredibly in-depth, complicated games. Normally, some of these games can take 3 to 4 hours to play. They've kind of gotten a reputation based around the mythos of this designer, Lacerda, to the point where you're starting to see people refer to other games in other genres like Coffee Traders as kind of a Lacerda-style game, because it does a lot of the things that Lacerda has made famous and has taken them and applied them to other kind of Euro themes by other designers. Now, there's a reason that Lacerda has earned this reputation. First of all of his game designs have been huge hits. He has brought us games like The Gallerist, Lisboa, Kanban. These are games that you've probably heard about if you've been gaming or if you're in a group that plays heavier games. Now, this game deserves its place right up there as one of Lacerda's best games, and honestly, this just might be my favorite of his games so far.
4.
This is the 7th collaboration between Lacerda, Ian O'Toole, and Eagle Griffin Games. Now, that is important for a number of reasons. For one, this collaboration first started with the game Gallerist. When the game Gallerist came on the scene, it took a lot of people, myself included, by surprise. It was the first of Vital's games that I had played. It featured that Ian O'Toole artwork and, of course, the production value that Eagle Griffin puts into every single one of their games. This is a combination that I don't think can be beat in this board game industry. Eagle Griffin's giant boxes, and you might see this in other games like Rococo, for example, they are always well packed with great components and great themes. Ian O'Toole is one of the masters of board game art. Now, he does games way outside of just these games for Vital Lacerda. He has done a huge amount of board game art, and his board game style is so unique, but he can always do kind of different touches. For example, this game, Weather Machine, almost has kind of a steampunk feel, and I will be honest, I think this is one of the best boards that Ian O'Toole has ever illustrated in his career. I mean, this thing, if this was a poster, I would hang it on my wall. And actually, on the back of this board, you've got the actual image of the board without all the icons, and it looks absolutely phenomenal. This is another knockout from them. This is a must-have if you are collecting these games. I know I am. I have them in my Calyx shelves right there, all stacked nicely. This collaboration has been going on for years, and each one of these games just keeps getting better and better, and I'm honestly excited to see where they go next.
3.
It's actually a fairly approachable game. I've talked about On Mars and Lisboa and Kanban in the past. We've talked about them on this channel. Those games are definitely far more on the complicated side of Lacerda's catalog versus games like Escape Plan and Weather Machine and The Gallerist, which are actually, I think, more approachable for beginners. Now, the reason that Kanban and On Mars and Lisboa are so much heavier and so much deeper is because there's so much you have to pay attention to. On Mars, specifically, there are so many different icons. There's such a strange economy of actions in that game. It can be very difficult to grasp On Mars during your first play. Same thing with Kanban. I don't think you're going to really understand how that game scores until you've played through the entire game and gotten to that scoring phase once, and then it'll click with you. Weather Machine is not like that. Weather Machine is a worker placement game. There's only 4 worker placement spots on the entire board. So with that aspect, it's kind of like The Gallerist. You can go to one of those 4 spots. Each spot offers you 2 different actions. Unlike The Gallerist, though, multiple players can go to one action spot. You're not knocking anybody out of an action spot. There are 3 spaces for each one. One of those spaces allows you to do both actions, which is something that you didn't see in The Gallerist either. Although I would love to have that in The Gallerist because sometimes you really, really want to do both actions. In Weather Machine, you can do that, but you're going to be paying for it. But when I say approachable, I mean for a Lacerda game, for a Vital Lacerda game, this is a great entry point, I think. We had several new players that have played this game, and it hasn't been an issue for them. I think because the idea of the game, the theme of the game, making this weather machine, is just built into the entire game. Each action has something to do with building that weather machine, and it's so thematic. You're collecting these machine parts, you're collecting these different chemicals to run experiments in a lab to ultimately try to fight back the crazy weather that was caused by this invention in the first place. So I would say that this game is actually as accessible as the Gallerist. If you've played the Gallerist and you thought that wasn't too bad, but On Mars was a little intimidating, this is definitely a good stepping stone up from the Gallerist. In fact, I think in some ways it's easier to play than the Gallerist because you're not getting blocked out of your actions. You're able to actually kind of plan out your strategy a little bit better. And that brings us right into number 2.
2.
This game is completely player controlled. The economy of the game is player controlled. The pacing of the game is player controlled. In Kanban, you had this one character, Sandra, that moved across the worker placement spots, blocking them out and eventually scoring you based on how you did in each one of those action spots. In Weather Machine, you have Latif, who is going to be moving around the board as well, but he only moves when players take the action next to him, and he gives you benefits when you do so. As he cycles through the board, he's eventually going to return to his office where he pays you in income. So how often you get that income and how often Latif moves is completely player controlled. The end game is also player controlled. There's no set amount of rounds here. Kind of like the Gallerist and On Mars, where you have a few different in-game conditions that can be triggered. As soon as one of those conditions is met, the game ends. Basically, by completing one of these 3 sections of the board, you'll end the game. This can happen over the course of 3 hours, it could happen over the course of 4 or even 2 if players are really trying to drive forward that end game. It's a very interesting economy. It's a very interesting pacing because what you're able to do in this game or how many turns you're going to be able to get in this game are completely based on how many turns the other players at the table are going to give you. If you have one player that's trying to race to completing one of these sections and end the game early, you have to rethink your strategy. You might have planned out a strategy over X number of turns, but you're getting X minus 5. So all of a sudden now you have to double back and rethink what you want to do. Now, I said this game was approachable and a little easier for newcomers, and I'll stand by that. It's easier to pivot your strategy. If you see the game is ending, you can start shifting over to scoring points, which come in the form of publishing papers by studying this weather machine. So you can pivot to that early or towards the end of the game and start earning points instead of just gathering resources or trying to build your engine. Because at some point, you're going to need to make that pivot, and you can do that when you want. Watching the other players and seeing when they start pivoting to doing the in-game scoring stuff is kind of a good signifier to you that maybe you should start doing that as well. So it kind of has that same On Mars feel where you're watching what other players are doing. When other players start building up towards the end game, you realize, oh, I should probably start doing that as well. I think that's a unique aspect here and kind of bridges the gap between some of his games that have specific round counters like Escape Plan, where you only have X rounds to escape the city, or Kanban, where it's slightly player controlled, but Sandra's going to keep moving and you're going to keep having those meetings that are eventually going to score the end of the game.
1.
It has a very unique action economy. Now, every action is going to take 1 or 2 vouchers, and these actions are going to interact with one of the 4 sections of the board. You have the government funding, you have the experiments, you have the weather machine itself, and then you have your supply, which lets you rebuild kind of your player board, build out your workshop and things like that. Each one of these actions takes a specific voucher, and you'll see on the board, the symbols for those vouchers are very clear. What's not clear, however, is that each action that you take gives you a voucher for a different action. So you can't just go to the same action over and over again. You will lose all your vouchers, and you can cap out. Each voucher has its own cap limit. So if you go to an action that's giving you vouchers that you can't use, you're wasting those vouchers. You are not playing efficiently. Finding that path that you can weave where you're getting vouchers just in time to use them is super important and makes for a very interesting game. Sometimes you're wanting to go to action spots just to gain vouchers so that you could come somewhere else. Now, there are other ways to earn vouchers, and you have some wild vouchers, so there is some flexibility here. It's not a completely tight system. You can exchange vouchers to other vouchers at a 3-to-1 rate. Again, not super efficient. In a game like this where efficiency is important, you really don't want to do that. You really want to be always planning ahead. To make it even more interesting, you can gain more vouchers if Latif or other players are already at that action spot. So you can try to time it in such a way that you can gain 2 or 3 potential vouchers from each action you go to, which will then free you up to take that next action. There's a cycle to the way these vouchers work. Each action that gains you vouchers also benefits a little bit from something you're doing. Some of these spaces that give you materials are also going to give you vouchers to come spend out where you're going to use those materials. Some of these places that let you put down your assistant bots that give you rewards back are going to give you vouchers in places where you can spend those rewards. So if you can see the way that those wheels are turning, that's really what makes this game kind of a machine within a machine. Now, it's not on rails. You're not benefiting from just, oh, well, this action spot gave me these vouchers, so that's my obvious next action. That isn't exactly how you want to do it. You want to plan ahead, of course. You want to be efficient, but there's so many things to do here with really just 8 actions, 4 action spots. Each one has 2 different things you can do. It really does turn it into a very tight game. So those are 5 things that I think you need to know about Weather Machine. If you walked into this video with no knowledge about who Lacerda is or what the big deal is about Weather Machine, hopefully you have a really good idea now what all the hype is about, why people are excited for this game. The game is on Kickstarter right now, so you can take a look at their Kickstarter page. Before the campaign is done, we'll probably have more content here on the channel, so you can look forward to that. I can say personally, right now, after 2 plays, I'm a huge fan of Weather Machine, and I am dying to get it back on the table. And heck, I just might frame this board. This is a piece of artwork. So again, take a look at all that on the Kickstarter page. Let me know in the comments. I want to hear about your favorite Lacerda game and whether or not you've gotten a chance to play Weather Machine yet. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you so much for watching, and until I see you next time, keep having fun at the table.
Congratulations, you got to the end of one of our videos. Now, if you want more practice, just click on the video over here. It's another video. You might not have seen it yet, so click on it. If you don't want to do that, at least click on the subscription button below. That always helps us. And if you want notifications, please ring that bell.